Sorry, I got a little behind on things. This is coming up a little bit late. It should have been here Sunday. I'll still be doing another one of these NFL Draft Q&A videos later on this week, so stay tuned for that. But thanks in the meantime for those of you that submitted your questions. Let's go ahead and get started so I can hopefully get through all of them if I can. Desmake, I think I pronounced it right, Dino. In a few words, how would you describe Jared Goff and Carson Wentz post-combine, keeping in mind that I'm a hopeless Browns fan? Very simple. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is the best quarterback in this draft. Jared Goff has good starter potential and is the other true first-round quarterback in this draft class. But you want Carson Wentz at number 2. Let somebody like LA get Jared Goff in the middle of round 1. He'll be a good fit for them. He could do great things for them. But you need Carson Wentz. You want Carson Wentz. You have to have Carson Wentz, period. Just an idea, sport. Best natural football player in the draft. That's actually a really good question. As best natural football player does not necessarily equal the best player, period. But in terms of the guys that I've watched so far, and the player who the game seems to come the easiest to, I might say Jalen Ramsey from Florida State. He might be the best natural football player in this draft. If Jalen Smith didn't have his knee all tore up to hell right now, I would say maybe that he was. But in terms of best natural football player, I think it's Jalen Ramsey probably. Balls Sebastian. Should the Vikings trade down from 23 and choose safety Carl Joseph and wide receiver Tyler Boyd in round 2? Love the thought of trading down a little bit and getting a safety like Carl Joseph to pair with Harrison Smith in the back end of that secondary. But be careful how much you'd want to trade back to round number 2 because he might not be there. You also got to find the right trade partner. I understand your thought process. And sometimes trading down works and sometimes trading down doesn't. Let's see here. Vernon Iguakun. Will you do a scouting video on safety Von Bell? Yes. Yes. Within the week. Actually, as this is being recorded, I just previously did about 3-4 scouting videos as well, and there's more in the tank that I just haven't recorded yet. So you're going to have a lot of prospect videos coming out in the next couple of weeks. Von Bell, I'm sure, will be one of them soon, but yes, he'll definitely get one at some point in time. Let's see here. Neil, Enfia 10. I like Leonard Floyd a lot, but do you think he could really fit in a 4-3 as a pass rusher? I also like Leonard Floyd a lot. Do I think that he can fit in a 4-3 as a pass rusher, though? I guess you'll find out pretty soon when I upload my Leonard Floyd scouting report video. You will just have to stay tuned for that in the meantime. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll back through here with the questions here on Twitter. I'm still getting used to this damn tablet. Let's see here. Beam it a Cashman. When do you think the Raiders take a safety? I think without Charles Woodson, it's their biggest need. Probably day 2. It's a big need for them. You could argue it's the biggest need. I might gravitate to corner being a bigger need, but safety is definitely a need for them, sure. I think day 2 is a place that it's going to be. A guy like Darian Thompson would really make a lot of sense for them in round 2. I just don't know at pick 14 in round 1, that there's a safety worth taking there. I'm not sold yet, even though I haven't fully graded the corners yet. I'm not sure there's a corner worth taking with that pick. Let's see here. And then he says, am I underestimating the Browns by mocking them to take Connor Cook with pick number 2? Maybe pick number 2 of round 4. Now, for some reason, I think if Cook ends up anywhere, he'll end up somewhere like San Francisco or something. He ain't going in the first round. I can tell you that much right now. Mark Whalen, 67. Should Miami go Ezekiel Elliott or Ronnie Stanley, assuming both are available in round 1? Ezekiel Elliott is the better football player. Ezekiel Elliott is the pick. Stanley makes sense for them, but if Elliott's there, Elliott should be the pick. That's simple. In that case, they're both positions of need. You go with the better player. Ezekiel Elliott is the better player over Ronnie Stanley. Andrew Wilson. If the Browns take Wentz at 2, what should they get in round 2? A receiver or a pass rusher? A good football player. They need a lot of them on both sides of the ball. I would have a preference for them in round 2 to get some type of potential game changer at the receiver position. And that might be a good place for them to get it because they're going to have that first pick in round number 2. There's going to be a receiver there that could make quite a bit of sense for them. You know, if a Braxton Miller is there, or maybe a Josh Doctson is there, maybe a Will Fuller is there, you know, maybe a Michael Thomas is there. There are some guys that would make tremendous sense for them. I personally would like to gravitate towards receiver, especially with taking the young quarterback. But again, it just depends on how the draft breaks down. If you've got some other guys that are more highly graded than the wide receivers, you don't just take the wide receiver to take the wide receiver. But they've got to be guys that are good football players that make sense for your team and fit your system. The real Danzel, do you think Paxton Lynch will end up falling to 22 to the Texans? Yes. Yes, I do. He might even fall past that. I think there's a chance of that. Desmake with another question. What should the Browns do with pick 2? Pick Myles Jack or a quarterback or any trade scenarios? No trade scenarios for the Browns. Just pick a franchise changer at number 2. At pick number 2, the franchise changer for them is Carson Wentz, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. End of discussion. Stephen Law. What defensive player could come in and make an impact for the Colts at pick 18? Reggie Ragland as an inside linebacker would be one. If he was still there on the board, even though I don't think he will be. Leonard Floyd, the edge rusher from Georgia, is another. Eli Apple, the corner from Ohio State, may be one as well. A few different guys. You know, we'll see what they end up doing. Let's see here. OTRS Schlick Jr. Hey, Dad, which is the least likely for Carolina's first-round pick? Getting a wide receiver or getting an offensive lineman? At this point in time, in the past 2 drafts, they spent a first and a second-round pick, respectively, on Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess. I think a wide receiver would be much less likely compared to an offensive lineman. I think an offensive lineman is a possibility, although for some reason I keep getting the sense that Carolina will go defensive in the first round. It either be somebody on the defensive line or somebody in the secondary. That's just kind of my thoughts on it. California EST 96, will the Rams be better served addressing main non-QB needs in free agency and trading the farm for Wentz? How ironic would that be? That a few years after thinking they were hot shit and trolling the world and trolling the Redskins because they sat there and got all those picks for RG3 and ended up fundamentally doing nothing with them while the Redskins made the playoffs twice in 4 years, that they now would be in the position that they had to trade the farm to go up and get Carson Wentz. But you're asking me if I would? Yes. 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 If you got the Browns stupid enough to trade out of pick 2 to trade back to 15, I think at that point, though, that's such a big move. You'd almost have to get a third team involved, similar to what happened with the Saints, Redskins, and Bears in '99 with the Ricky Williams trade. You had to get 3 teams involved. I think it would have to take 3 teams trading in order to make a trade like that work, a move like that work for the Rams. That's just my thoughts on it. But if I were them, yes, I would. Let's see here. Franz Wolfensteiner. Who would you rather have, a decent left tackle or a Pro Bowl right tackle? I just find it hard to justify Conklin going before Taylor Decker. Well, I'm going to tell you this much. I find it hard to justify taking Jack Conklin before Eric Decker because I just don't think Jack Conklin is a left tackle at the NFL level. I think Taylor Decker gets too much crap about not being able to hang on the left side. And I really don't understand it when people sit there and talk about, Jack Conklin being able to stick on the left side. I just don't see it. I just don't. D. Hardy 94. How great would it be if the Vikings somehow traded up to the top 10 and got Myles Jack and reunited all the UCLA linebackers? Oh my God! Could you imagine that fucking linebacking core of Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, and Myles Jack? Holy shit, at this point in time, you probably should hope for Myles Jack to tear his meniscus in his other knee walking down the damn steps at home, so that way he could fall to you at 23, because if you did that, you'd probably be beating it off for a decade at the thought of that fucking middle level of your defense. Jerks. 7 Widar. Looks like Ezekiel, Elliott, and Paxton Lynch won't be there at 22 for the Texans. So would you take Coleman or Fuller, and why? What makes you think that Corey Coleman would be there? I think there's a chance he goes in the top half of round 1, as he should. But I think there's a chance that Paxton Lynch is there. Fuller at 22, yeah, he's got speed, but goddamn, man. He's got some suspect-ass hands, and I just have trouble taking guys with suspect-ass hands at number 22 in the first round. I just do. John Clint 01, which receiver could fit the Ravens in the second or third round? Braxton Miller would be one. Josh Doctson would most certainly be another one. I'm trying to think of who else would jump off the charts to me. Maybe a Sterling Shepard from Oklahoma would be another one. But those would be a few of the guys that I could think of. Brosif929, who should Atlanta take at 17? Not named Reggie Ragland because he doesn't fit their scheme. Yeah, he really doesn't. I've mocked him there before, but you're right. He really actually doesn't fit their scheme. With the emphasis that Quinn's going to want to place on speed and athleticism, Ragland's not that dude. He's not that guy. Who should they take at 17? If the medicals check out, Jalen Smith. You might want me to say Darren Lee. Darren Lee ain't going to be there, brother. Sorry to tell you. Otherwise, in terms of 17, maybe a defensive end. The defensive end to me would be Kevin Dodd, even though, yes, I have some concerns about taking a guy that's going to be 24 this year already. That high in round one, he could be a really good complement to Vic Beasley. So maybe there. I don't know that there's safety there. Otherwise, for the Falcons at 17, wide receiver might be the way to go. Let's see here. NFL_HS. What do you mean by edge position? Is it the same as outside linebacker in the 3-4? Pretty much. It's kind of the bucket I'll throw in for like 4-3 Sam backers that rush the quarterback and 3-4 outside linebackers or smaller defensive ends. So it's kind of like a conglomeration of a few different things, yes. Saving Ryan's privates. Who should Minnesota take in the first round? The honest, generic answer is going to be the best available player on the board. If you're going to tell me based off of needs, offensive lineman would definitely be a need. Wide receiver would be a need. I think they could use some more depth on the defensive line. They most certainly could use a safety to play opposite Harrison Smith in the back end of that defense. So they got a few directions to go. Square Wheels 23. Should the Cowboys take Myles Jack or Ezekiel Elliott? That is an interesting question. That's a really good question. There's a chance that Myles Jack's not there, but he probably would be. And he has some game-changing abilities with what he can do as a linebacker. For them, though, at the end of the day, if they're not going to take a quarterback, then they're still going to be in with Tony Romo. Then you need to protect Tony Romo at every sense of the word and at every turn. And the best way you protect Tony Romo at this point in time is Ezekiel Elliott. So I think at the end of the day, you have to take Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. I really do. Some Cowboys fans will basically say, if you're going to do that trade back, maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Maybe just fucking take the guy at 4. Because I think I could justify it. This is not a great draft. Like I've said before, there are 6 guys that are a cut above the rest, and Ezekiel Elliott is one of those 6. He should be one of the first 6 picks in this year's draft. He should be. Running back or not, doesn't matter. Because he's part of that group that is a cut above the rest, in my opinion. Let's see here. Bob Coulier. People say Brady isn't the GOAT because he has Belichick. Why does Montana get a pass with Walsh? Now, that is a fair and great question, isn't it? Coaches and, you look at him. Bill Walsh, all-time great coach. Bill Belichick, all-time great coach. Joe Montana won 3 of his 4 Super Bowls with Bill Walsh at the helm. His last one with George Seifert. Brady and Belichick have been to 6 Super Bowls and won 4 of them. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to bring that shit up with Brady, then why don't you bring that up with Joe Montana? I think that's a fair question. Alex Shirley 10, who's an underrated quarterback prospect no one's talking about for the NFL. For the NFL draft. DeMarco Murray. The Titans traded for DeMarco Murray. Wow. Let's see here. Underrated quarterback prospect. I haven't graded most of the rest of the guys. I like a little bit of Jacoby Brissett's game, though. And I think people sleep on him a little bit. And guys like Connor Cook and Christian Hackenberg or Cardell Jones maybe get more attention than they deserve. So that might be the guy that I think of. And then he also asked, should the Titans go for C.J. Procise, Kenneth Dixon, Josh Doctson, or Corey Coleman with the second or third round pick? You wish Corey Coleman would be there with round 2, brother. Doctson, again, if he's there, that's pretty good value to me. Now that you've traded for DeMarco Murray, I guess it would take Procise or Dixon off the board for whatever the hell reason they did that for. Killer Beeman 616. If the Texans were to get a QB other than Hackenberg, who should they go for? If he was there at 22, just take Paxton Lynch. Because your fan base needs that. Frankly, your organization needs that. If you're not going to take Hackenberg, then take Paxton Lynch. Don't fuck around in the later rounds. You're the Texans. You need to take a quarterback in round 1. What the fuck, Curry? Do you think the NFL draft is unfair to great running back prospects, especially in a weak class like this year? I think so, a little bit. Because if I'm not mistaken, the top 3 leading rushers in the league this year were all former first-round picks, weren't they? Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, and Todd Gurley? Yes, you could sit there and say that you can get running backs anywhere in the draft, and that is true. But there are lots of other positions where you can get players all throughout the rest of the draft, too. People will talk about Rob Gronkowski. He was a second-round pick. Jimmy Graham was a third-round pick. Michael Bennett was an undrafted free agent out of Texas A&M. I think back to my Bears. Peanut Tillman was a second-round pick. Lance Briggs was a third-round pick. I'm just saying, Alshon Jeffrey was a second-round pick. Matt Forte was a second-round pick. I'm just saying, you could look at all these other positions and see guys that were drafted late that went on to have great, or in some cases even in Hall of Fame careers. And so I think sometimes there's too much emphasis placed on the devaluing of the running back position now. They just don't mean as much. If you got the chance to get a special dude, and granted, even good running backs, not every running back that's top ranked in a draft class is special and necessitates a high first-round pick. But when they are a special talent, and combining that, like you said, with the weaker draft class this year, you have to take that dude. Forget all that other bullshit. Because I'm going to tell you right now, and even if you sit there and say, well, Matt Forte was a second-round pick, so that kind of blows up your logic. No, it's besides the point. The point being, if I'm going to take a running back in the top 10 and I think he's Matt Forte for 8 years, do I feel good about making that selection and handing him the card? You're goddamn right I do, and I do it 10 out of fucking 10 times. And if you wouldn't, you're stupid. I'm sorry. You sit there and talk about your system, talk about taking these guys late. Yes, you can take these guys late. But Antonio Brown was what, a 6th-round pick? So if we use that logic, then why the hell would I take a wide receiver high? Because Antonio Brown might be the best goddamn wide receiver in the league, and he was a fucking 6th-round pick. A 6th-round pick, people. 6th-round pick. I'm just saying. You got to think about this stuff. Let's see here. I got to see if we got any other ones. Oh, yes. Kane Gress asked the last question for this Q&A. At 13 for the Eagles, who fits? And he expanded here. Jack Conklin, Taylor Decker, Corey Coleman, or would you say another D lineman to add on to the new 4-3 defense, or another defensive back now that Maxwell is being traded? It's funny, they're already trading guys that Chip Kelly had just brought in. Shows how ridiculously over his head he was. Something to me about Conklin screams out to me that they'd want him. They really need a game changer outside at wide receiver, though, so I think Coleman makes some sense. Defensive lineman makes sense. I don't know if there's a defensive lineman there at 13, though, especially in N. That makes a ton of sense. Some might even say quarterback, but they just gave Bradford a ton of money because they're stupid. So I guess we will find out. Well, that's it for this Q&A. Thanks again for you guys that submitted your questions for this one. The other one, the next one, will be coming up a little bit later this week. So I'll let you know when it's time to submit questions for that one. Thanks for your participation and cooperation and your visitation to this channel for this video. Goodbye.